And then the second, and I guess more important question, specifically for Mr. Jordan. The Republicans, having been in control of Congress before, have talked and talked about this is what we should do in terms of health care reform, and they did absolutely nothing toward that. Why are we to believe, if your party regains power, that you're going to do anything different this time?
Great question. I think it's a $64,000 question. I just spoke to a group of Republicans before I came to tonight's forum, and I told them it's going to be critical when Republicans win. We actually act like conservatives, we act like Republicans, and do what we told the voters we were going to do. Because you're exactly right, 6-8 years ago, Republicans spent too much money. Of course, now Democrats have taken it to an all-new level. So it's important to. Dick Armey has a great line. He says, when we act like us, we win. When we act like them, we lose. It's important we act like us, not only when we're running for the job, but actually when voters vote us in and we're in the office and we need to do what we told the voters we were going to do. The example to follow, and I've been talking about this individual for now 2 months, is the governor of New Jersey. Chris Christie ran in New Jersey. They faced an $8 billion budget shortfall. He told the citizens of New Jersey, if you elect me, I will not raise taxes. I will cut spending to deal with our budget situation. And he did just that. Imagine this, a politician doing what he told the voters he was going to do. And it's interesting. Here we have the contrast between him and President Obama. President Obama, who's taxed and spent and spent and taxed, and his approval ratings are in the low 40s. Chris Christie, who came in with the tough love message. And the American people, in my judgment, have never been more receptive to the tough love solutions that need to be implemented to deal with our situation and put us back on the right path. And he came in and did those tough things. And in New Jersey, his approval ratings are around 60% because he's saying, look, I'm going to do what I told the voters needed to be done. We're going to cut spending and we're going to balance our budget, and he did just that. That's the example to follow.
All right, our next question is actually from Ron Letterman, and we will start with Mr. Jordan.
Entitlement spending, since we're on deficits and runaway budgets, entitlements account for 2/3 or more of the federal budget. I want to know your plans for reining those in and meeting the current obligations, as well as funding.
Yeah, great question. First of all, as I outlined our budget proposal that we brought forward the last 2 years in Congress, when you hold discretionary spending, when you hold the line on that, it then forces Congress to do what they should have been doing all along. Look at each program, look at each line item. I ask the question all the time when I'm talking with constituents, how many of you think there may be some redundancy in a $3.4 trillion federal budget? And everyone gets it. So it forces members of Congress to do what they should have been doing and look at those programs that are redundant, that don't make sense, that aren't working, and eliminate those programs. And then once you do that, you can also then begin to focus in on the long-term cost drivers in our budget, which are the entitlement programs, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. And you have to come at it from the perspective, we want to save Social Security. This is a promise the government has made with its citizens, and promises have to be kept. And so if you come at it with that perspective, we're going to make the system work so it doesn't go bankrupt, then you're going to get the right solution. And frankly, the right solution is this, in my judgment. For those individuals who are close at or near retirement age, the system should continue as is, because they've built their lives around planning for the system with the rules and the structure that's in place currently. But for younger Americans, they should in fact be given the option to take some of their money and personally be accountable for how that money is invested and spent, and then eventually return to them at retirement age. That is the approach that I think makes sense. That's the approach that's consistent with American principles. That's the approach that's consistent with the promise that we need to keep and make sure Social Security is saved, and that it's there for those people who have planned for it, and that promise and that contract that the government has made with its citizens is actually kept in place.
Mr. Kissick?
Well, in addition to the idea of slowly and gradually privatizing Social Security, which is what Representative Jordan is advocating, a lot of it has to do with the average person just has an inherent inability to be able to save money because of the current tax rates. I'm going to be a little bit of a broken record throughout this debate, I'll admit, on taxes, but it all goes back to that. People cannot put enough money away for their future because they are having to spend too much of it in federal taxation. That needs to play a big role. As far as the entitlements go, we have to, we do need to look at what's inefficient, what's redundant, but at some point, all the entitlement programs have to eventually be geared, slowly and incrementally toward privatization. The American taxpayers cannot afford the current debt burden that we've amassed because of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Right now, we're projected to spend more than half of all governmental spending on meeting those obligations. Like I said, within the next few years. And that's just an unsustainable rate. We have to start gearing everything toward privatization slowly, because people have been paying into the system for most of their lives. The United States government is legally and constitutionally obligated to meet that obligation. But we do need to start working toward privatization. We need to get taxes down, not just try and find minor tax breaks we can give people to make everything more affordable, make their health care more affordable, make the ability to save for the future more affordable. We've got to dramatically simplify the tax code. Tax breaks tend to, complicate, an issue that's already 30,000 to 60,000 pages thick, depending on the font size and the line spacing you use. All of this is just unsustainable. We have to, get every aspect of the federal government under control.
Follow-up question, Mr. Letterman?
One for each of you. I'll start with Mr. Kissick. So specific to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, other than reducing taxes and long-term privatization, they're going to go bankrupt within 25 years. What do you do to meet the obligations to current recipients, near-term recipients? How do you make them last until you get to the point where you can make them private?
And it goes back to the other issue we've already been talking about on that one, because we've got to get back to a surplus situation as far as tax revenue against federal spending. That's the only way you're going to save it, because you've got to get the revenues to exceed the expenditures, so you can have that money to start paying back into that entitlement obligation that's been set up. Right now, we've already this year for the first time, we are spending more for Social Security benefits than we are actually getting in FICA taxes collected. We've got to get that situation turned around now. Like I said, it's an overall spending issue that has to be addressed, because without that surplus, there is no way to get that caught up and get it saved so that people over the next 25 years will have it for them.
Yeah, go ahead. I'd like to follow up on that too.
I had a different question for you, but if Bart, you're...
Mr. Letterman, give him your other question.
Okay. I wanted to ask Mr. Jordan specifically about privatization or allowing people to take more control. You're talking about the Bush proposal to still forced contributions, but people could direct how they invest it, or are you saying rather than my employer taking 6.3 or 4% of my paycheck, I keep it and I do with it what I want?
No, I don't know what the specific proposal will be. The model that I think needs to be implemented, and there are variations of how this needs to be done, is for younger Americans. They should in fact have the ability to control their money to some degree versus just giving it to the federal government and expecting the federal government to invest and take care of it. I think that makes sense. But for those individuals who are close to retirement age, I think we have to make sure the current system is going to be there for them, because after all, they have structured their retirement planning, structured their lives, structured their family lives around the current system. So that to me makes the most sense in the direction we have to go. The specifics of it, how much the individual gets to control, I think those can be worked out. But that's a model that makes sense, that's consistent with American principles of both making sure we keep our promise, making sure we save the system, and making sure younger Americans get a chance to invest their money.